Hello, everyone. Welcome to Immigration Justice. Hope you are all pumped because I am.
Frank, you might have to help me monitor the chat because I don't know.
I will do that.
Work as I'm presenting.
Yeah, don't try to do that. You're already doing enough, which I'm super grateful for. Hello, everyone. Welcome again. I think everyone's come in, but we have a guest expert still, right? So let's see. Again, super excited to have you all here. Again, we'll just wait one more minute, I think, for everyone to trickle in, and then we can get started. How's everyone feeling, by the way?
You guys have more energy than this.
I'm very fine. I'm happy, ecstatic.
Awesome. Ecstatic.
Yeah,
awesome.
Totally. It's so fake, but it works.
Good. If the energy's there, then all right. Okay, I think. Thank you, Pragam. I think we get started. Omar, take us away.
Yeah, for sure. So hello, everyone, and we're delighted to have you here for our Immigration Justice Group workshop. So Immigrants Unite, a deep dive into U.S. immigration policy, is a workshop where you learn about the historical context and significance of a multitude of immigration laws in U.S. history. We have a ton of engaging activities planned that will push you to think critically about various scenarios and really get a personal perspective of the information discussed. Make sure to also pay attention to our array of infographics and videos that will include viewpoints from across the board. And most of all, we hope you enjoy it.
Hello, my name is Maram and I'll be leading this first activity. So this first activity is called word association. What we'll be doing is we'll be showing a series of pictures and we'll be coming up in the next few slides. We want you to unmute your mics and say the first word or idea that comes to your mind when you see them. If you can't unmute your mic, please put it in the chat. Is everybody ready? You just put a thumbs up or just put a check mark on the screen. So yeah.
So you want to see everyone's mics unmuted, Liz?
Okay, I think we're good. Yeah.
Mics unmuted? Am I still? So again, for those participating, we'd love for you to unmute your mics because the whole point of this game is we want you to say out loud the word that comes to mind. Let me see these.
Freedom.
I think we're ready.
Okay, so let's go on to the first picture. So this is the first picture. Oh, sorry.
Liberty.
Liberty, I heard liberty. Okay, what else do you see?
Immigration.
Immigration, okay.
Ellis Island.
Asylum, okay, that's good.
No, I said
Anybody
Ellis
else?
Island.
Asylum?
Ellis Island.
Oh, Ellis Island, yes, yes. Freedom, okay. Anybody else? NYC, yes, yes, yes.
Opportunity.
Yes, opportunity. Anybody else?
Hope.
Hope. Okay, I think that's it. So of course it's the Statue of Liberty. I heard like liberty, hope, opportunity, freedom, and I feel like the Statue of Liberty does embody that as it was a symbol for hope during around the 1900s. Welcome and guiding light, yes, like as it was a symbol for newcoming immigrants coming to the United States during the 1900s. And it was a gift from France, so we dearly thank France. Okay, let's move on to the next slide. Okay, we have the flag. What do we think from this picture?
America.
Unity, maybe. Oh,
America. I heard liberty, I think, yeah. What else? Nationalism, yes. America, unity.
Say a symbol.
politics.
Politics. 13 colonies. Patriotic, yes. 50 states. Yeah. Representation. I agree with that. What else?
Maybe power.
Yes, power. We are big. Yeah, patriotic again. Yeah, we are a very nationalist nation as well. I heard somebody said that too, so I agree. So of course, this is the American flag. It is what symbol this country. I have a lot of things to say about this flag, but we're not gonna get into that yet. But it's like really ironic that it says like it's a symbol of like unity and stuff like that. Well, I don't really think it does symbol that, but there's like a lot of meanings to the American flag. It's like very could be interpreted in many different ways. So next slide. Okay, we see a bunch of different people. What do you think?
Patriotism or
Diversity.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, patriotism.
Naturalization.
Naturalization, yes. Diversity. Oh, somebody said American dream, residence. Yeah.
Assimilation.
Culture. I'm sorry, what you said?
Election.
Assimilation.
Election, yes. Election.
Yeah, that.
Somebody said culture, American dream. Of course. Anything else? No. Okay, so I feel like this represents, I guess, like it could represent different many things. We see a diverse group of people, wanting to go vote, holding up their American flags. I feel like it just represents, it's like like a small part of the census in one, showing the diversity of America, how there's so many people here with like who look so different. But we all are like one as well. Okay, next slide. What do we see in this picture? Violence.
Border.
Division.
I'm sorry, what? Sorry, I didn't hear that.
Division.
Division, yes, I agree. The wall, hostility, yes. Border, of course, yeah. Well, separation, yes. Separation again, I agree with that. Border, okay, I agree with that. Yeah, so basically this is the border wall. I feel like from what you guys said, I feel like you guys really refer to the border wall as something like negative, with negative connotations like division, hostility, and separation, stuff like that, which I do agree with you a lot. So yeah. Next slide. What do we see in this picture? What do we think? Family, yes. Fear, yes. Fear.
Escape.
Struggle. Escape. I see two fears, which is really, yeah, I agree.
Say running.
Running, escape. Yeah. Reminds me of Kabul. Oh, yes. Someone said it reminds me of Kabul right now. I really agree with that. What's happening in Afghanistan is really disheartening. And I feel like this represents how some family members are fleeing Afghanistan due to the Taliban. Yes, Ruby said in the chat, does anyone wish to share how these images make them feel? Sad, struggle, uncertainty. Yeah, it's a very sad image.
Depressing. Worried.
Like you don't know what's gonna happen to you. Like you wanted to go to a country where you thought you could feel safe, but like you don't. Pain, yes. Yeah, I agree. I totally agree with all of these. I feel like this picture is like, it shows the reality of immigration and wanting to seek a better life in another country, but the country does not want to accept you. And I feel like it just shows the struggle of immigrants face day-to-day basis. So next slide. I feel like we all like agree. Okay, so what do we see here? Abuse, yes. Lost, alone. Like children getting separated, yes. Refugees, refugee camps, yes. Inhumane, yes.
Ice.
Cold, lonely, yeah.
Depressing.
I feel like it was just also correlated with the other pictures. We know that inhumane treatment, yes, unfair. It's really unjust. How we see children getting separated from their families in internment and immigration camps. Yes, I agree. Okay, next slide. So this one is, okay, so what do you see? What do you think about this one? Protest, yes.
Change.
Justice, yes. march.
Election.
Activism, free speech, support, yeah, Bill of Rights, yes. So I see, so we see like many different family members of maybe immigrants marching for a more fair immigration laws and the better treatment of immigrants and refugees. So thank you so basically this activity is a wrap. Thank you for participating. I feel like I feel like specific words really justify what the picture was. I feel like words do speak a lot, and I feel like some of the words just really spoke to what the picture was. So thank you guys for activity, and I'm handing it off to Jacob to explain our next.
Okay, here's the introduction here, and the question that we wanted to ask first was, why do we care about immigration policy? We care about immigration policy because it affects Americans and immigrants alike. These policies affect different things in American life, such as okay. So just the economy, culture, and things of that nature. However, I think I'm of the opinion that we can all agree that the current immigration system isn't working. And the election of Donald Trump in 2016 proved that. And I think we should formulate a policy that actually works for the American people. That's it. Yeah, I want to go to the next slide and do your thing.
Right. So with that in mind, we now want to ask, what are some policies, past and present, that matter?
So for this activity, we see 5 different acts. We see the National Origins Formula 1924, the Chinese Exclusion Act 1882, the Cuban Refugee Adjustment Act 1966, and the Dream Act 2010, and the Immigration Reform Control Act 1986. So for this activity, we'll be trying to guess which which act matches with the description. So first we have the National Origins Formula 1924. Like if you don't have prior knowledge, you could guess based on keywords you see in the description, the short descriptions. So for the National Origins Act, which one do you think it matches best? One. So undocumented immigrants who came to the U.S. as children. So which is number of 1, 2, 3, 4, or 5? Let's see. You could just put it in the chat. 2. 2. I see a lot of 2s too. Okay. 2. Okay, you could just press it, Marcella. Okay, so all you were right. Oh, go back. Yeah. Oh no. Yeah. Okay, so you were right. Yes, the National Origin Act in 1924, they capped immigration off to 150,000. So yes. The second is Chinese Exclusion Act of 1822. So which one do you think correlates with this one? I think this one is very obvious, but yeah, 4. Someone said 3. Oh, 4. Yeah, 4. Okay, 4. Okay, you can move. Click it. Yeah, so Chinese Exclusion Act, basically this act did, they made it so that Chinese laborers couldn't enter the U.S. which for 10 plus years, and this decreased the amount of Chinese immigrants coming for labor in the U.S. Type 1. Yeah, 4. 3. The Cuban Refugee Adjustment Act 1966. 5. Yeah. 5. Yeah, just 5. Yeah, so the Cuban Refugee Act Adjustment Act made it so that Cubans were guaranteed legal status in 1966, which they weren't before. And I'll get into more deeper descriptions after. Yes, okay, Dream Act. So which one do you guys think? Yes, undocumented immigrant. Oh, you guys are really good. Damn, I didn't even know this before. Yes, 1. Yeah, you could press it. So that means that undocumented immigrants who came to the U.S. as children would get temporary legal status, which includes education, being able to get an education, go to college, get a job. The last one. So Immigration Reform Control Act 1986. Yes, yeah, 3. So police can legally deport and review papers like immigration officials. Okay. Yeah. So this is basically I created this timeline of like most important immigration laws starting from 1882. So first of all, we started from the Chinese Exclusion Act, and basically this restricted Chinese laborers for 10 years due to the due to racism and cheap labor threats from China. As we all know about child labor, and because of child labor, the U.S. decided to restrict Chinese labor due to threats and from China because they weren't paying their laborers well. The National Origins Formula Act was the first numerical limit of immigration, as immigration was capped at 150,000, which is very low. I feel like it's very low, and I think was the lowest in the nation. The Cuban Refugee Act Adjustment Act in 1966. So Cubans who are already here in the U.S. will have legal status, which means they could vote, like they have their own rights. The Immigration Reform and Control Act of 1986. This act increased border control, and it made it to a crime to hire illegal immigrants, which means undocumented immigrants, and it made it possible for local police to be deputized and act as immigrant officials. That means that if you were to cross the border, a police officer could be able to stop you, review your papers, and see if you will be able to access the country. And this caused many problems because the police didn't have really good training in immigration policy, immigration law, so they didn't really know what they were doing. And the person could have the right papers, but they were still denied access to the U.S., which made it highly unfair. And I think this law is still in effect. I think it's called Title 4, I believe, and it's still in effect, which makes it really hard for immigrants and refugees to migrate here, even with the correct papers. And the June Act 2010, this made undocumented immigrants who came to the U.S. as children will be able to get temporary legal status to work and get educated. They're called dreamers. And basically, if they were brought here from their parents as children, they would be able to have access to they will be able to have access to their rights. So yeah, you guys did really good for the activity. I didn't even know some of this stuff, so I feel that you guys will be able to match. That was really impressive. So yeah, we'll be moving on to the next activity.
Sorry,
All
I
right.
got kicked off.
All right. So the first policy that's going to be discussed in depth is the wet foot, dry foot policy. It was created around 1966, and it allowed anyone who immigrated from Cuba to the U.S. to obtain residency 1 year later.
So now we're going to dive into the impact of this policy. Specifically, how does this policy affect immigrants who are now trying to enter the U.S.? So it permitted those who arrived to U.S. shores with dry fee asylum and the opportunity to qualify for legal permanent residence and eventually U.S. citizen. However, those who arrived with wet feet were sent back to Cuba or a third-party country. Now, this struck issue because there was no legitimacy to if said third party would grant the refugees asylum, and what was permitting said third parties from sending them back to Cuba as well. The Obama administration at this time terminated the policy because they claimed that it was necessary in order to continue normalizing relations between the US and Cuba, which is a process that was initiated when diplomatic relations were restored in 2014. However, sending back these refugees or canceling this policy what it did in reality was that it sent these people back into Castro's oppressive regime, and it endangered their lives once again. The policy from the beginning always contained an element of unfairness, but however, removing this policy indicated that the Obama administration did not care about human rights, as it stripped the ability for Cubans fleeing this oppressive regime to be considered as refugees in general.
The second policy that we'll be talking about is the sanctuary policy. The sanctuary policy is a policy that is restricting the ability of state and local police to make arrests for federal immigration violations or to detain individuals on civil immigration warrants, restricting the police or other city workers from asking about immigration status. How does this policy affect immigrants who are in the US? The sanctuary policy affects immigrants who are in the US by protecting them and making them feel safe in the states, counties, and cities that they live in. And this shows that immigrant people are important.
Now we're going to dive into the 1986 immigration law. So this law was signed by former President Reagan in order to make it illegal for employers to knowingly hire individuals who did not come with proper documentation. So the Immigration and Naturalization Service and the US Border Control were given increased funding for the purpose of enforcing this law. However, under the law, the IRCA developed new separate visa categories for temporary agriculture / non-agricultural work, this allowing those that met certain requirements to gain legal status in the United States. This applied to individuals who entered the country up until January 1st of 1992. 2.7 million immigrants were granted status under this law. However, it still poses threats to undocumented working class immigrants.
So how did this policy necessarily affect immigrants in the United States? This policy deemed it unlawful for employers to hire immigrants with fraudulent documents. It was essential for them to authenticate the documents of immigrants before employing them.
Title 42 U.S.C. Section 265 of the 1944 Public Health and Service Act expulsions are removals by the U.S. to persons for which have recently resided in a country where communicable diseases was present. It was resurfaced and put into action on March 20th of 2020 with the Trump administration's reason being the rise in COVID-19 cases. However, time has indicated that the act has been directed to target asylum seekers along the Canadian and Mexican borders. So Border Patrol uses Title 42 to expel individuals who arrive at the US-Mexican border without giving them the opportunity to seek asylum. The origin of the policy came from the Department of Homeland Security and the Trump White House, claiming that it was a necessity for the public health from a public health standpoint. However, CDC scientists expressed that opposition to the invocation of Title 42, stating that there was no public health rationale to support it. And while borders remain largely open to other travelers, there's no reason to send back refugees. By claiming that Title 42 under this pretext of public health blatantly showcases that hypocrisy of expelling families back into the arm and harm of persecution. It fails to safeguard public health in general, and it fails to help these undocumented immigrants escape persecution.
All right, so the 1996 Illegal Immigration Reform and Immigration Act, aka IRA, says that immigrants in the US that are illicitly, meaning illegally, in the country for about 5 months, but under a year, have to stay outside of the US for 3 years. But if they stay in the US more than 1 year, they will be obligated to stay outside the US for 10 years unless they have a waiver. This law also required immigrants fleeing persecution to apply for asylum status within 1 year of entering the country. It also gave birth the 287G program, making it possible for local police to be deputized to act as immigration officials. So now we will be showing a video that further explains why the US has so many undocumented immigrants.
Immigration system. One of the aspects of the 1996 law that is particularly strict and I think in many respects inhumane is the so-called 3 and 10 year bars. Those 3 and 10 year bars made these legal pathways nearly impossible to obtain. They work like this. Anyone who's been undocumented in the US for 6 months and wants to gain legal status first has to leave the country and be barred from returning for 3 years. If they've been undocumented for more than a year, they're barred for 10 years. So if they want to get lawful status through a job, they first have to leave the US for 10 years, or through their brother, leave for 10 years, or through their spouse, leave for 10 years.
It's family separation by another name. The bars were intended to try to essentially create punishments that were so severe to deter people essentially from coming here. But as we've seen with many other deterrence-based policies, the practical effect is very different.
Instead, it incentivized people to stay in the US undocumented. Before IRA, Mexican immigrants who came to the US unlawfully were about 50% likely to return to Mexico within a year. But after 1996, more people started staying in the US.
There were around 5 million undocumented immigrants living at the US before IRA. Today, it's at least double that.
And we are somehow surprised by this outcome. This is of our own doing.
Laws like IRA shaped the way the US focuses on immigration enforcement as a deterrent. But really, it proved that stronger enforcement doesn't actually stop undocumented immigration.
These laws or the politics of the 90s didn't really change the reasons why people come to the United States.
Today, views on immigrants are very different than they were in the 1990s. Most Americans now see them as a strength. Immigration system.
So how does this policy affect immigrants? Well, the 1996 immigration law has caused the denial of 1 in 5 asylum seekers as of local and state office to enact immigration officials under agreements with the Department of Homeland Security and impose penalties for immigrants who illicitly remained in the U.S. for defined periods of time. Furthermore, it created new retroactive changes affecting the extent of crimes that justify the deportation of legal and illegal immigrants. So right now, activity. So for the moment, we have explored multiple immigration laws and policies that have impacted the U.S. tremendously throughout the years. We have the latter engulfed the wet foot, dry foot policy, Title 42, the 1986 immigration law, etc. If you were to be the president before the stand of these laws, would you avoid any of them from being enacted? Explain your reasoning. So yeah, so I'll give an example just so it's like more clear the question itself. So you can choose however many laws you want, but for the sake of starting the conversation, if I were to avoid 2 of these laws from being enacted, it would be the 1986 and 1996 immigration laws. This is because the 1986 law caused many people to lose the opportunity to obtain a job and achieve a better life. It also excluded certain people from being hired for work in the US, which limits the availability of workers and makes it so that there is a lesser diversity in skills and talent, meaning our potential for improvement is limited. On the other hand, the 1996 immigration law caused people who used to live in the US, even legal immigrants, to lose their legal status and qualify for deportation even for acts committed before the enactment of this law. It also hindered the ability for people to seek asylum.
Yeah, so you guys have all been really engaged in the chat,
Okay.
but we'd love to hear some voices from the participants. Based on the laws that we've gone over, which would you change? Which would you prevent from? Which would you veto, basically? And again, we'd love to hear someone unmute.
So someone in chat said, with the benefit of hindsight, we can clearly see the negative consequences of such policies. They caused family separation and prevented people from working to provide for themselves. We can see that these policies generally do more harm than good, and so I would prevent them from being approved. I agree with your state. Anyone else has anything to add to the conversation?
I mean, I think it's more of an issue of actual enforcement, right? Because the reason that we have a lot of illegal immigrants is because the ICE is not particularly doing their job, or Border Control isn't particularly doing their job. I don't think the issue is the policies. I think it's the enforcement of such policies. I think if I was the president, I'd make sure that enforcement was actually put through.
Well, yeah, I mean, the way these laws work and they perform and they are enforced, it also has a big impact on whether they work or not. And also, like, we may see different issues, so we may agree to disagree, but at the same time, we can all agree that these laws don't necessarily help the people or they work for the people because of the way they are being, yeah, they are being acted upon. So, um, well, does anyone else have anything else to say? If not, then I guess we can continue.
I don't know why I keep getting kicked out.
So someone else said I would prevent them from being approved because these policies don't take into account the experiences of immigrants and their vulnerable situation. Um, it only thinks about the US and how the US is itself will be benefited or be harmed. So yeah, I agree with it. For example, yeah. So yeah, let's just continue.
Okay, so we are now going to move into an activity. So after listening to the previous slides, you should have like a brief understanding of what goes into immigration policies. So in this activity, you will attempt to match an immigration policy to the image provided. So feel free to unmute and write your answers in the chat and take your best guess. It's okay to be unfamiliar with immigration policies, but use the images to guide your responses. And so I will give you guys a couple seconds to make a guess for the first cartoon. And again, you can unmute or you can write it in the chat.
I'm going to say that the first one is the Cuban Immigration Act, and the second one is the 1986 Amnesty Bill, probably.
Yeah, good guess. Good guess.
I was gonna say the first one.
What'd you say? Sorry.
Yeah, I was gonna say the first one is like dry foot, wet foot, because you have people in boats. I don't know if that's correct.
Okay, yeah, good guess. Okay. Yeah, so make sure to look at the details. Definitely like the Florida sign that could be indicating somewhere like a country close to Florida. Yeah. But good jobs on the dates. And the second one, notice somebody jumping over the fence, what that could mean. That could be implying. I'll give you guys like 10 more seconds and then I'll read out the answers. Anyone else have a guess? Yeah. Okay. Thank you, Randy. Okay, so I can just read out the responses. So the first image is the Cuban Refugee Adjustment Act of 1966, which allowed Cuban citizens living in the US to apply for becoming permanent residents after meeting eligibility requirements. So the cartoon portrays Cubans entering the country through Florida in hopes to apply for permanent residency. So good guesses on that one. A lot of you got it. So the second one is the Immigration Reform and Control Act of 1986. And basically the act altered US immigration laws through prohibiting hiring illegal immigrants and penalizing companies for doing so. So in the cartoon, you can see a line of people along with amnesty, which is a pardon for people who've been convicted with political offenses, waiting to receive US citizenship. So good guesses, and we can move on to the next slide. Yeah, and then you can see the answers. Okay. So these are the next ones, and go ahead and make your guesses. Again, make sure to look at the details, like the ladder in the first one. There might be something written on there, which I don't think you can see from there. But I'm not even sure what it says. Yeah, but make sure to look at the details. Okay.
The first one says Chinese wall, if anybody can't read it.
Yeah. Thank you. Okay, guessing dry foot, wet foot. Let's get the, let's see. Oh, sorry.
I don't know the name, but it was the one that was like maybe like barring the Chinese workers from entering. Maybe it's that one because it says
Okay.
Chinese.
Okay, yeah. Thank you. Yeah. U.S. interest to increase immigration with the declining birth rate. So I definitely agree with me. Yeah. Great. The second one could be the Dream Act. Good guesses. Very close on the first one. I think some of you got it actually. And what about the last one? What do we think?
I think that's the 1924 Immigration Act, probably.
Oh, good, good. Okay. Yes, definitely pay attention to the USA on the ground, the Europe on one side of the what seems to be a funnel. Okay, good guesses. I'll give you guys like a couple more seconds. One from the 1920s. Good guess. Yeah, you guys are good with dates. Okay, so I'll just give you the answers. And Marcel, I think you can tap them and they'll just come up. Yeah. So the first one is the Chinese Exclusion Act of 1882, which was the first and only federal legislation to suspend immigration for a specific nationality. The act banned Chinese laborers from entering the US, and the act developed years of racial hostility. The cartoon depicts this act through the phrase seen written on the wall, which reads, "The Chinese wall around the United States of America." Good job for those of you who pointed that out. And it's describing this envisioned border created after the act. And so for the second one, it's the Illegal Immigration Reform and Immigrant Responsibility Act of 1996, which strengthened US immigration laws, penalizing undocumented immigrants who committed crimes in the US. The cartoon mocks the idea of how Congress took the act to their advantage in hopes of removing more illegal immigrants, including children, as shown in the image. And the last one was the Natural Origins Formula of 1924. Good job to those of you who remember the dates again, which strengthened the quotas, making them stricter and more permanent. This was designed to keep, quote, undesirable ethnic groups out of the country. The act maintained the US's image as a country of European stock. So the cartoon portrays the US's new quotas influenced by anti-immigrant sentiment, rooting back from World War I. So that's the activity. Good job, guys. It seems like you learned a lot from the previous slides, and we can go on to the next one.
We'd like to hear your thoughts on this. Do you personally believe immigrants present a positive or negative impact to our American economy? And how should our answer to this question impact our national immigration policy? We'd like for you all to unmute, so feel free to share your thoughts and opinions. And remember, this is a safe place for all, and we will respect each other's views and beliefs. So don't be afraid to speak up.
I would say that immigration is negative to the economy, because even though, and I've heard most of the arguments before, they increase the GDP, but most of that GDP increase goes to the immigrants themselves, and only 0.2%, I think, of that increase goes to the natives. So there's really no benefit of immigration for the native population.
We'd love to hear again from participants and not workshop. People working on a workshop. It's all right.
And for those guys who are putting it in the chat, you can also feel free to also raise your hand and say it out loud as well.
I said I don't have the numbers, but immigrants might boost the economy by consumption of goods and services, plus by fulfilling labor demands, they boost employment and taxes.
Thank you. Eliza, is that how you say it?
Yeah. Sorry, 1 second. So I think that if immigrants actually present a positive impact to the economy, because I did like a essay thing on this before, and immigrants are actually highly entrepreneurial, and they launch companies at like twice the rate the rate of native born Americans actually creating a large number of jobs. And all of these increases employment opportunities for native born Americans and boost wages and strengthens the middle class. And then there's like a chain reaction, which is always beneficial. And then just like research in general shows that immigrants generally complement rather than compete with American workers because they have like a different set of skills and educational backgrounds. And yeah.
Yeah, I agree with Elisa. I feel like are positive. Immigration is positive to the American economy. Not just for the economy, but I just think in general for like American culture, just because like of the lack of like ethnic diversity, I guess, like awareness. I think just bringing in like those different cultures just helps America in general. Even if like, but there are like, it's not even just like cultural benefits, it's also economic benefits. So I don't really see like how it would be pushback, but I would like see it, but I don't understand it.
I also just add that like it's like kind of a myth or like a misunderstanding that like it's that if an immigrant gets a job, it means that an American worker lost a job. Our economy isn't exactly like that. And it's not that when one individual obtains a job and then does not mean that another individual loses it. And that one job with many other jobs can be created. So, it's not that if one person gets a job, another person takes it.
Thank you all for sharing and being respectful towards each other. It was a great discussion. We'll move on now.
Okay, this was my slide, and this infographic on the side is the one that I made. What I wrote was immigration is net negative economically. This is a quote from, I believe his name's Stephen Karamoto. And this is according to the Center of Immigration Studies. It says in the first quarter of 2013, the number of working age natives 16 to 65 working was 13 million fewer than in the first quarter of 2000, while the number of immigrants working was 5.3 million greater over the same period. Thus, all of the employment growth over the last 13 years went to immigrants, even though the native born accounted for 2/3 of the growth in the working age population. And in the infographic that I put in right here, I put in the same thing that I mentioned before. The 11% higher GDP, the 97.8% of that GDP that goes to the immigrants themselves. And I also put in another quote by Stephen A. Karamoto that says, second, there's the fiscal impact, taxes paid by immigrants minus the cost they create for the government. There's general agreement that less educated, lower income immigrants are a net fiscal drain and are more educated higher income immigrants are a net fiscal benefit. That's it.
Okay, just to touch briefly about the positive impacts, because you guys were able to kind of touch on all the big points. Like one of the big reasons is that immigrants stimulate the economy just because of like the amount of like goods that they buy and how it goes back into the economy. And there's also a really good like point in statistics to prove that critical jobs are done by immigrants that cannot be done by natives. For example, immigrants only represent 17% of the workforce, but are able to account for like 38% of home health aides, 44% of medical scientists, 42% of computer software developers. So there is clearly that there is a lot of immigrants that are able to do jobs that aren't necessarily done by natives. So that's it for this slide. And then just going into a little bit more about the impacts on the economy. But I think that the best way to measure the positive impact is just through productivity and how effective a lot of immigrant workers are and how hardworking they are. And there are statistics to prove this. So for example, one example can be the fact that they're actually able to do a lot for they're able to support the aging population, which is something which is a really critical issue, just because there have been a lot of low birth rates in like the recent generations. So a lot of immigrants are able to fill in that gap. And then there's also the fact that I think somebody mentioned this, but there's also a lot of natives are going into a more educational positions. So a lot of labor-intensive jobs are like there aren't enough workers to fill in those gaps. So that's where immigrants come in, and they're usually ones that are working like full time, like 50 weeks or more in these fields. So yeah, that's it.
Okay, so a deeper look into international immigration policies and how the US can learn and take away from them could be a way to better our current inhumane and immoral methods. So in the infographic, we see countries such as Canada, Colombia, and even the EU's approaches to immigration and whether or not these approaches would function in the US. For instance, Colombia is working towards providing a 10-year migratory status to over 1.7 million Venezuelan immigrants seeking refuge, and we question the effectivity of these policies if they were to be placed in the US. Canada and Europe undergo similar approaches as they both seek to admit immigrants to employ them, making them have a wide employment pool. Lastly, on the bottom right, we are given 2 crucial steps one could take to help your voice become heard, which are staying informed through checking your sources and supporting organizations which provide direct services to immigrants and refugees.
So the big question is, what can you do to directly support immigrants and immigration positive policies that can help reform the system? So one of the best ways is actually to call your representatives and to share and voice their concerns. So I guess I'll just go into a couple different like legislations that are currently trying to be passed in the House and the Senate real quickly, and exactly what you can do to call your representatives. So the first example is the Access to Counsel Act of 2021, and this was passed in the House in like April, and it's basically just ensures that US citizens and other individuals with legal status are able to consult with an attorney and help them understand their rights. So this is very important just because it helps to make sure that they're not being taken advantage of. And to support the national So then to support the National Origin-Based Anti-Discrimination for Non-Immigrants Act, this basically just helps to impose limitations on the president's authority to suspend immigrants from entering the United States. So this just allows, and this also just allows there to be no religious discrimination. And this again was passed in the House, but needs to be passed in the Senate. And then finally, we have the recognizing the month of June as Immigrant Heritage Month. So as we kind of like discussed and looked over, there is like a lot of benefits to immigrants, and they've done a lot for this country. So this is just a way to acknowledge the importance of immigrants in the United States. So yeah, that's it.
So now we'll be watching this small message from refugees and immigrants sharing why all American citizens should vote.
As a Black man in America, there's a lot of injustice going on. That's one thing that's very personal to me. I'll be voting this year, and I'll make sure change happens because I know my vote will be counted.
Back in August of 2020, my grandma was hospitalized due to COVID, and so she's been discharged. She's supposed to be on oxygen, and she can't get oxygen refilled because she doesn't have insurance. So for me, I think that healthcare is a big issue.
Voting is a way for my voice to be heard and to advocate for what I believe is right, such as refugees and immigration's rights.
I have a home here, so I have my country, my land, everything happening here is matter to me because I am part of this community.
We waited for like our maybe entire life to do this. It took us actually 6 years to be a citizen, and we finally going to vote for the first time in our life as an American citizen.
So voting is empowerment for me because as a young girl, when I was in Afghanistan under the Taliban regime, my human rights were taken away from me. Now I can stand up for those that do not have that power.
please vote, because your vote counts and your vote will change the world.
You have your voice, and your voice have so much power.
Your vote, my vote, our vote, vote our country.
All right, so after watching that incredibly moving video, we have a few questions to discuss. And first of all is, immediately after watching, what are your first initial reactions to the video? So feel free to just shout it out or type it in the chat.
So just for this section, just because we are 4 minutes over time, we're gonna go over this very briefly. Again, just put it in the chat or just shout out your initial answers to any of the 3 questions. Again, we would love to have this discussion, but it's just, we're 4 minutes over and we gotta have time for feedback. But go to Omar.
All right, so yeah, any sort of reactions, drop them in the chat right now. Rapid fire.
Yeah, I would say that I'm going to answer this third question. I would say the relationship between immigration and voting would be that it sort of inflates the electorate, right? And that, I mean, that's pretty much my entire point, right? That's it. I don't think there's anything else I could add to that.
I agree, yeah. Okay, and then for the next 2 questions, we're gonna combine them into one. So how do you believe that this relates to the policies that we talked about earlier in this workshop? And what is the relationship between immigration and voting? And why exactly does voting matter when we're discussing these kinds of matters? So feel free to just shout it out, saying why we should vote, especially on immigration policies, or just leave like a 2-sentence or a 2-word response in the chat. Yeah, I couldn't agree more. Voting is very important to have your voice heard. That's sort of the premise of why we vote. All right, and since we're low on time, thank you guys for participating in this super quick discussion, and we'll keep it moving.
Call to action. What are some things that we can do to help support immigration? Some things that we can do is donate to Lifting Hands International, and it is an organization that helps communities, for instance, refugees at home or abroad, or signing the COVID-19 and Migration Reunite Families Speed Up the Immigration Process petition. This petition helps reunite families together and helps the immigration process be more faster. We can also help by signing the Reunite Separated Families and Provide Relief Now petition. And this petition helps families by being protected from deportation and helps citizenship.
I think that's it.
Thank you all for.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Is Yeleni here?
I don't think so.
No, so she had like an event, like a last minute event, mandatory like all home meeting for a dorm. But she will be here for the second half.
So who's stepping into her role?
Ah,
I can do it.
okay.
All right, so now we're gonna so Sanda and Mello, I believe, all put in the rubric and the URL that you guys all need to fill out, but I can put it in the chat again. And while you guys are filling that out, please let us know what you guys thought. So what are some of the takeaways you guys have from the workshop? What are some
glows and grows that you want to also give us, because those are equally as important.
I would say one of the biggest goals for me, I really enjoyed the activity in the beginning with the we had to say the words and stuff like that for the pictures. I thought that was really powerful because people always say pictures 1,000 words, and then like you actually have to think about it, and then it really can be. I also really liked how you guys include, like, it wasn't one sided your perspectives. You also like included Jacob's perspective about how immigration could be negative for the economy, which is like really, it's like very rare when in a presentation, because usually people are one sided, but you gave your audience like a well rounded perspective. So I really enjoyed that. I enjoyed the activities. I enjoyed the presentation. And I think you guys did great.
Thank you. Does anyone else have any other opinions?
And don't be shy to critique. We do want to hear feedback, constructive criticism as well. That is what the grow part of glows and grows, what can be improved of our presentation moving forward, includes.
And feel free to put it in the chat if that's where you feel most comfortable.
Hi all, I'm Bonnie. Great presentation. I really enjoyed it. I'm with the New York Immigration Coalition. I'm actually a civic engagement fellow. So everything that I think you discussed really applied to my work. Some recommendations that I had, I think your slides were so engaging and helpful. I think you discussed a lot of material in a very short amount of time, especially all the policies. And so when you were doing the activities, hi Alexandra, I think it would be helpful to have like a little blurb about like all the policies you discussed, just so it's like a review, because I really liked your exercises, but I didn't feel like my memory was good enough. And then I think another thing that your group really touched on was like discussing immigrants beyond only their economics. And there was also that humanity aspect, which I really liked. I think that we have to be a little careful with our language. I know we threw out words like native and illegal, and I think in considering the history of the US, especially indigenous people, we have to be careful, and also slavery. But great presentation, and I'll drop all my notes in the chat.
Thank you. We appreciate that. And that has been a conversation, like the vocabulary of immigration has been a conversation many of us facilitators have had a few different times.
I just want to jump in and say I really enjoyed the different activities. Y'all took a presentation, which seems like really passive, but made room for lots of engagement. And I saw a lot of discussion and room for people with different opinions about immigration, having space to voice those distinctions. So great job. I saw a lot of like great facilitation energy in the room as well. So I just want to uplift all of y'all who stepped up to facilitate a piece of your workshop, and did really well working as a team. What else, y'all, from the group that participated in the workshop? Please mute yourself, raise your hand, support your peers, give them some feedback, not just in the rubric, but on Zoom, please. We have 1 minute left. So can I get somebody from the other team that participated to close us out with one comment for this group? Remember, this group is going to be in your workshop following dinner. So give them the same energy that you want from your workshop.
I think they did really great in terms of like talking about the policies and acts. You know, there are things that I forgot about when I was learning them in U.S. history, like the IRA one and the Chinese Exclusion Act. I forgot about them until now, so I really appreciate that.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah, I said they did great. They made it unbiased and talked about both the pros and the cons. They all showed the different steps to ensure change and combat the problem. And it was very informative and powerful. And I particularly loved the first activity, the word association.
Thank you. We appreciate all of your comments. I think now we're going to dinner break, right, Mel?
Let me just check in with Sanda and make sure we're going to get this group first. And in case that we are dismissing from our breakout rooms, please remember to be on time at 7:30, so that way we can break you out into those groups in time enough. When people are late, it's kind of hard to coordinate all of those breakout rooms and those people that need to be put individually into breakout rooms. So please show up on time, and again, bring all the energy that these your peers need in order to feel really successful in their workshops and get as much information as possible.
Is this group ready for the rooms to close?
I think so,
Yes.
yeah.
Milena, are you here?
All right, I think we're gonna get started. I'm gonna share my screen if everybody's here.
All right. I think we're just gonna start off by welcoming everyone. Thank you guys for coming. We do want to give a special shout out to our guest host, our guest expert, Alana Cohen, and thank you for being here. The overall goal of this workshop is to kind of just bring attention to climate justice, and the Climate Justice Action Group has worked really hard on this, so I'll leave it to you guys.
Hi everyone, my name is Mohammed Islam. My pronouns are he, him. I'm a rising senior at the Baccalaureate School for Global Education. Today you'll learn about politics and corporations and how they play into environmental justice. You'll participate in different activities and games to broaden your understanding of climate justice.
Meet the presenters. Everyone introduce themselves.
So Mohammed already introduced himself, so I'm just going to introduce myself. My name's Nika. My pronouns are she, her, and I'm going to be covering the solutions part of this presentation. Who's gonna go next?
Hi, my name is Sama Rodriguez. My pronouns are she and her, and I'll be talking about like the politics later on.
Hi, my name is Pragim Tiwari. My pronouns are he, him, and I'm going to be talking about the legislative policies that we are currently drafting to fight climate change.
Hello, everyone. My name is Jennifer Monterosa, and today I will be doing the introductory slides.
Hi everyone, I'm Nina, and I'm going to be talking about companies and their damage later on.
Hello, my name is Mitri. Pronouns are he, him. I'm going to be talking about the relationship between capitalism and climate change.
Hi everyone, my name is Muhilan. My pronouns are also he, him, and I'll be talking about the corporations part.
Hi everyone, my name is Eliza. My pronouns are she, her, and I'll be talking about the solutions.
Hi everyone, I'm Matej Schmelke. My pronouns are he, him, and I'm going to be talking about policies that we can do to affect climate change.
So now we'll be doing an activity using Padlet. So we're going to send the link right now so you guys can join and answer the questions.
Okay, so the first question you'll see is, do you think climate change is important? Why or why not?
So we have a few answers coming in. So someone says yes, because we only have one Earth and we are ruining it. Yeah, I agree. I think this is an important issue because it affects the future survival of the planet and ecosphere. Yes, because for long we won't be able to inhabit the planet we live in. Definitely, because it is the greatest compounder of structural inequalities and injustice to our world. Yeah. And last, climate change justice is crucial to ensuring a future for our planet and the countless generations of people to come. Definitely, I agree. As for the next question, did you experience anything as a result of climate change? Someone says, I have heard about the rising sea levels and how they affect wildlife. Yeah, it's very concerning. And nothing personally, okay. A loss of future as a young person. Okay. Nothing myself, but I've heard about it. Last but not least, what do you think needs to happen for climate change to decrease? I think that we need more laws to target climate change. Yeah. Find more effective ways to stop climate change. Massive system to change the shift from a racist fossil fuel economy to regenerative just one to a just return. Effective policies, more policy regulating companies. So a lot of it's to do with policy making and government.
Okay, yeah, I agree with all the responses, and you'll be learning more about get through our presentations, and you'll be learning about the policies that are currently being instated or will be instated, hopefully.
Yeah, so this is environmental protection legislation. And so we're going to be looking at 4 laws. You might have heard about some of these. It's the 2019 US Green New Deal, the 2021 Infrastructure Bill, the 2015 Paris Climate Accord. This one's really famous. And the 2019 European Union Green New Deal.
Okay, so first up is the 2019 U.S. Green New Deal. There's been a lot of talk about this in the news, so you probably heard of it somewhere. So it's basically a massive policy bill. This is like one of the biggest bills that's ever been introduced that provides a framework for dealing with the effects of climate change. So it would create millions of new green energy jobs. It would invest millions into infrastructure and focuses mainly on making the U.S. carbon neutral, which basically means it wouldn't put any carbon into the atmosphere, only take it out. So some of the cons about this bill, some claim that the plan is simply too expensive. It is one of the most expensive bills ever introduced. It has a price tag of around 3 trillion. It's scarce on details in some of the areas of how to achieve its goals, and it relies on technology that hasn't been created yet in some cases. So, this is another major bill in the US, is the 2021 infrastructure bill. This was recently proposed by President Biden. It's not entirely focused on climate change, but a big part of it is focusing on dealing with its effects by investing millions into new energy sectors of the economy to create green new jobs and modernizing the nation's infrastructure, because a lot of it was created decades ago before we knew about the damages it causes to the environment. So it wants to create new technology to take that damage that is caused out of the atmosphere. So the bill has also been called too expensive by many, and it's hard to pass because Congress is so divided. I mean, you see that in the news; they can barely agree on anything. So it's really hard to get that bill passed.
Yeah, so this is the really famous one, the Paris Accord. Everyone's heard of it, and so basically, the Paris Accord is the only legally binding international legislative agreement regarding climate change. So there are many countries who are trying to tackle their own carbon footprint themselves, but the Paris Accord is the only one that's working on this on an international scale, and it's signed by a lot of countries. So 195 countries, which is more or less about 97% of all countries that are recognized. And it promises to limit the effects of global warming and encourages investment in renewable energy. This is basically trying to reduce the carbon footprint, because if we invest more money into renewable energies, we'll make it more efficient and cheaper, so people will adopt it more. Many people oppose the policy because it can cut jobs, and that's one of the reasons there was so much argument about President Trump and the Paris Accord, because he just believed it was too expensive, and he believed it was cutting down jobs, and he believed that the United States was being affected negatively by it more than other countries. And so it is difficult to enforce as well. The massive scale of the policy, because it affects 195 countries, it's just massive, and so it's really difficult to enforce it and make sure everyone's following all of the legislation. And it affects separate countries differently. So this was one of the major complaints President Trump had, was that the Paris Accord impacts different countries differently. So the United States, for example, is a richer country. So the Paris Accord expected more from it in terms of reducing the carbon footprint. And if you look at other countries that are developing or underdeveloped countries, the Paris Accord didn't affect them that much. And some also just claim that it's not enough. It's not aggressive enough to tackle global warming, because it tries to help global warming, and obviously any start is essential, but it isn't taking as aggressive steps as we might need because of the way we're polluting the environment. So the 2019 European Union, I missed the word union there, but the European Union Green New Deal, this is actually surprising because most people don't know about this. I think like the American Green New Deal is like the buzzword, and people just forget about the rest of the world. The European Union Green New Deal ensures that the European Union will become carbon neutral by 2050. And one of the great things about this is that, as we talked about, the United States Green New Deal, it is very, very, it's in its early stages. It hasn't been enforced, and it's not very effective today. And we have hopes for the future, but it hasn't done anything today. The European Union Green New Deal was passed in 2019. And it promises the EU will be carbon neutral by 2050. Carbon neutral basically means that the amount of carbon that you are polluting into the environment, you are basically doing none. And in fact, some estimate that the EU might even become carbon positive, which means that it has a positive impact on the environment. So the EU, 2050 is basically a long time. It's 30 years. But then the EU also is trying to cut down all carbon emissions by 55% in the next decade. So this is more aggressive steps, And so basically, just much like anything, starting is easier than finishing it. So we're trying to get 55% of all carbon emissions cut down within the next 10 years, so we can slowly try to get 100% in 30 years. But the European Union Green New Deal obviously only impacts European Union countries, which is like almost all of Europe, excluding like Switzerland and some other places. But it's only affecting a very small amount of countries in the grand scheme of things. And so many argue that this will only affect the European Union and it won't have that big of a deal because we need a more global approach to tackle climate change, particularly because the European Union, although it is a big polluter, it isn't the biggest. You know, those are China, India, the bigger countries. And so, yeah, some argue it won't be very effective. And that's the EU Green New Deal.
So after hearing about all these policies, we kind of want to have a discussion with you guys. Do you think any of these policies should be implemented? Do you guys have any proposed policies? And do you think the current policies we have in place are effective enough? So leave it in the chat or unmute, whatever you want to do.
Me, I'm I'm in support of natural conservation, not the mainstream climate change activism that's promoted in America. I would say that climate change is important to the extent that you need to obviously conserve the state of the earth so that it doesn't change as greatly. But I don't think that climate change is as serious as some people make it out to be, as if we're gonna all die in like 9 years. People have been saying that the world's gonna end at 2000, 2012. And I think each time people say that, I just tend to not believe it.
Yeah, if I could respond to that. Basically, I think the people who are trying to scare people into climate change are just as bad as the people who don't admit climate change exists. Because as you said, you know, there were fears the world will end in 2012, 2011, and it hasn't happened because they were just exaggerating to get people's attention. But I think we need to realize that climate change is a real issue, but we can't get that by misleading people. People need to understand the real consequences, and that's what we're trying to do through this presentation.
So I wanted to say, sorry, my internet was cut down or something happened. But I wanted to say that since new laws like that support the usage of renewable sources for energy, I believe those laws and policies, they are really good because like we have to reduce the amount of fossil fuels we use because like fossil fuels are the main CO2 producer, the main carbon dioxide and greenhouse gas producer. So with that being said, fossil fuels they cause a lot of global warming, and so global warming has a real big effect on our pretty much everything, like even economy, market crashes, and famine, and also like multiple illnesses could be affecting us in the future and everything. So I believe that these policies are really good, and especially since we have to hold people accountable, the people that have been causing this for such a long time, because like I don't know, like ever since I'm not sure what time frame it was, but like 1970s, 80s, or I don't know when, but like um I know 30 plus years for sure. The oil industry has been like studying global warming, and even though they knew the effects of global warming and how much it could cause famine and the loss of species and life and the preservation of life, how it could impact all of these things, how it could impact the world negatively, they still continue to produce more and more oil just for the sake of making more money and economic incentives. And so in 2018, they still wanted to produce way more oil. I don't know what the data, well, the hard numbers are, but like it was a big amount, like a big increase from previous years. So we're only increasing our well, in some industries, we're increasing our carbon footprints. In other, we're diminishing it. But like in the oil industry, which is which affects climate change overall a lot, we're making it worse. And so, yeah, we need to be more proactive and more active, more efficiency when it comes to these policies and these changes?
I was gonna say that like I honestly do think that climate change is like a really big issue. And just because like some of us might not see it happening, which is maybe like how it's actually affecting people, their homes, the environment, animals are literally dying every day. It doesn't mean that it's not an actual issue. And I think that's why people are sometimes so ignorant because they don't see it with their own eyes. And so I think that's why we need to raise more awareness and educate more people on these situations, especially in schools, because we want this, like, we want to help climate change to like decrease so that the future generations can, still have a future, better said. But also maybe like implementing policies that can really force people to not pollute, because there's a lot of pollution everywhere, like wherever I mean, I've gone to the beach before and there's like a lot of pollution in the water and it's very disappointing to see. So also implementing policies that have to do with pollution. But yeah.
That was great.
I
Everyone made
just
some amazing. Oh, sorry. I'm sorry. We're getting a little short on time here, so we have to move on.
okay.
Sorry about that. But everyone made some amazing points, and Randy was talking about corporations, and we're actually going to go into that now about the effects of corporations on the environment. So
Yeah, so here we'll start off with the Kahoot about companies and their damages. So I'll share my screen. Could someone else share it? My computer's being really slow.
Can somebody explain what we're doing while y'all are still setting up?
Yeah, so the Kahoot is going to be about just facts about companies and damages they're doing to the climate and their emissions, their carbon emissions, and we're just going to see what you guys know. So, yeah.
Go ahead, continue to fully explain how to participate.
Oh yeah, you can. The instructions are on the screen, but you just go to kahoot.it and then you put in the code.
Okay. Mhm. And now it says,
Could you guys play the music background? It's so catchy.
I think you need to share a sound for that. So whoever's sharing screen, if you want to share sound.
Okay, is everyone? I think we're almost just like, depending on how many people
I can't hear it.
want to log in. Okay, is everyone that isn't in the climate group in?
I think you
Oh
can
yeah, I
move
can hear
on.
it. I can hear it. Turn it up.
Just to let you know that you can move on and people could join in later, so you don't have to hold up your workshop for people to join.
Yeah, we can start.
Yeah. Okay, so the first question, since 1998, just 100 companies have been responsible for more than blank percentage of the world's climate emissions. Yeah, 71. Which is surprisingly high for just 100 companies, considering like everything considered. Okay, a group of 15 food and beverage companies generate more greenhouse gas emissions annually than which country? So this was something that was pretty surprising to me when I researched it, because generally we were thinking about this from the perspective of oil companies, but there are also other companies like food and beverage companies that also agriculture, and like cattle agriculture that also have a lot of emissions, and they create a lot of emissions. Okay, so this is a true or false? Yeah, this one was pretty obvious. We'll get more into this when we talk about it in our slides after. Okay, so crude oil is turned into petroleum and used to make gasoline and other products such as so yeah, there's a lot of products that are created from petroleum. If you search up the list, there's a huge amount of products from ranging from gasoline to motor oil to a bunch of other stuff. So yeah, in the 2020 general election, oil and gas companies donated around $5 million to both candidates combined, and that they also donate a lot of money to Senate campaigns and things like that. So yeah, this one's pretty stark. There are contributions from the renewable energy sector, but they like pale extremely in comparison to the contributions from the fossil fuel industry. Three more. GHG is greenhouse gas. Yeah, 5.9 billion metric tons. And by federal lands, the government basically gives oil and gas companies permits to drill on land that belongs to the government. And there's no question that will happen. Okay, this is false because I think Biden said that he would reduce the number of permits he gave, and they were reduced for a little, but then in the later months of the year, they like really spiked, which is so. They were fined. This was the largest. So 900,000 was the largest fine for water contamination in history, and Chesapeake Energy can make this back in blank hours. So yeah, it only takes 3 hours for the largest fine in history to be made back by a company that was for water contamination. And yeah, probably in the chat that just shows how you need to. Yeah, so we're actually going to talk about this later. And I think that was the last question, yeah. Okay, so now we're going to focus in on some specific companies. And I think
So, are you surprised by what you learned to complete or anything? Hey, so not really. Yeah, most of you seem to know what you were doing. So I just want you guys to think about these questions while we're going through these three specific companies, oil companies. So what are some oil companies you know? You can just drop it in the chat for now. And then I also want you guys to think, who drives the school? Just raise your little Zoom emojis. So, let's see. We're in New York, so I don't expect it to be that many people. And then also while we're talking, I want you guys to think, do you think the fossil fuel industry supports the issue of climate justice? Do you expect them to support it? Why do you expect them to? Why do you not expect them to? So you can also drop this in the chat as we talk. So the first company, somebody said this in the chat already, Exxon. So Exxon is an everyday gas station merged with Mobil, and it was caught making people doubt scientists and climate change's reality. So you could just raise your Zoom emoji hands if you've seen these just passing by or anything. So Exxon's mobile net greenhouse gas emissions total 120 million metric tons of carbon dioxide as of 2019. And so this was a reduction of 3% from the previous year. And so they found out that carbon dioxide affected the climate and the environment since 1957. And so even since then, in 1968, they were warned about the rises in CO2 that could melt ice caps, increase sea levels, and increase plant photosynthesis and everything, and much more. And so warning after warning was made, but Exxon kept going, and CO2 levels kept rising, and Exxon's annual profit also kept rising. And then even later on, they created the Global Climate Coalition. And so this was created to oppose mandatory reductions in carbon emissions. And so they misused data claiming that fossil fuels may not cause global warming, and they were fueling these climate deniers as just so that their growth plan for expanding fossil fuel production would continue. Like, I think Randy previously said this, he was like right on the money. They wanted to continue their growth in oil and getting fossil fuels, and so they misused some data that they collected to get people to think otherwise. And so Exxon was exposed, and people are still waiting for them to join the fellow companies to cut their carbon emissions by 2050.
Okay, so another mega corporation is Shell, and they also emit a lot of metric tons of CO2, and they're by themselves responsible for 1% of global emissions. And they're also investing less, but they didn't comply with the Paris Accord, and they said that governments alone are responsible for meeting the Paris targets, so they're not. But recently, like we said in the Kahoot, a Dutch court ruled that Shell must cut their emissions 45% from 2019 levels, compared to their original plan of just 20% from 2016 levels. And Shell is appealing the ruling, which is the last update that I saw. But in general, European nations are regulating their oil and gas companies with more success than American ones. There was an article in the New York Times about how a company like British Petroleum is taking many more positive steps to renewable energy than American companies like Exxon and Chevron.
Okay, so Chevron is a company that didn't get the justice that activists wanted, like with Shell. So Chevron has emissions of 697 million tons of carbon dioxide. And so they only dedicated 0.2% of their investments on low carbon energy, unlike other oil companies so far. And so, even worse, they don't have a commitment to reach net zero or as of the Paris Agreement. And so, a few years ago, Chevron admitted that Texaco, their merger company, dumped over 18.5 billion gallons of toxic water into the Amazon rainforest, the Ecuadorian Amazon rainforest. And so Chevron argued that Texaco spent $40 million cleaning up the area, but in reality, they only deposited their toxic waste and set it on fire. And so the smoke contaminated the atmosphere, even damaging the whole area even worse. And so crops no longer yielded harvest, and fish stocks vanished, and the rainforest began to die off. And Chevron also tried to cover it up and push the blame onto Texaco, and it was taken to court, but unlike Royal Court Shell, Chevron won and justice was never served. And so their actions and ecological consequences of this are still shown in the area till now, and you can see it through the lack of biodiversity and the people still living there.
Okay, so now we're going to jump into the relationship between capitalism and climate change. So some background info. Capitalism is an economic system based on private ownership of the means of production and their operation for profit. Between excessive capitalism and environmental problems have led to a rise in demand for radical climate action movement, an increase of companies/factories have brought up the global industrial greenhouse gas emission and capitalism, which is driven by profit and accumulation. Companies may greenwash, which is a false impression or misleading information about how a company's product is environmentally safe.
I will be talking more about the climate aspect of the background info. So first of all, companies actually have control of their own economic resources, but they have control with competition with other companies. And that ultimately sets up these factories to provide products quickly. And they do that to satisfy customers, but that ultimately takes a lot of energy. And also to add on to that, the actual process of providing the products requires a heavy amount of energy, and the energy is used to power machines, and that also uses a lot of electricity. And this increase of demand for energy actually caused the extreme weather events with the rise of the Earth's temperature. And to add on to that, greenhouse gases actually trap heat in the atmosphere and warm the planet. And what this does is it can actually contribute to extreme weather, increased wildfires, and respiratory diseases from smog and air pollution. And finally, our primary source method of generating energy is by burning fossil fuels. And now we have a little fun activity for everyone.
Okay, so this will be like a brief discussion. So imagine how climate change would look like in a socialist society. So after talking about capitalism, we'll now think about how it would look in a socialist society. So socialism is an economic system that advocates in the means of production, distribution, and exchange regulated by the government, rather than private ownerships like capitalism. So the question is, which aspect of society should we keep, capitalism or socialism? So in the matter of time, let's just first review about the cons of capitalism from the previous slides. So you could like share out in the chat or just like talk.
I mean, me, honestly, I think socialism has proved itself to be a system that doesn't work ever. Each time it's tried, it doesn't work. It doesn't really matter what kind of version of socialism that you're using, it doesn't work. So I would say that capitalism would be the better system.
I would say that either one, well, depending on your goal, like if you want to achieve some type, well, it depends. Like for example, capitalism itself, its goal is to, for example, produce like an ending production of income and wealth, and obviously generating wealth, because like the point of capitalism is to create wealth instead of for example, as before in the past you had limited wealth, but like with capitalism you're supposed to have unlimited wealth because you can create it. But at the same time, capitalism makes it so that private industries have the incentive to, for example, since they have to create wealth, and that's the whole point of capitalism, they have the incentive to keep creating wealth without really having any concern for other people or for the environment or whatever, which is what we're seeing with climate change. So at the same time, though, since that has happened, it also causes like the frustration and the being so focused on keeping a capitalist system has made it, for example, for the US, based on some information I've seen, well, very recently. So I don't know much about like all of this, but like it has caused like even banks and everything to have to give away money for the economy to have that effect of keeping up growth or showing displaying growth, but at the same time that's a bubble. So it also has like many counters. Like if you have that philosophy that you always have to generate but you can never go down, which that would be natural, like even in market exchanges, if you have that thinking, then people will just yeah, companies will just try to generate income at the expense of others and pretty much everything else around them as long as they can generate income. And yeah, it seems like the government doesn't really like seeing downward changes when it comes to economy in a capitalist society. So yeah, banks tend to really perform when it comes to that, and yeah, it creates bubbles and potential market crashes or situations that we have seen in the past that haven't resulted in a positive outcome. So it depends. Like economic systems
Um,
have their corner and pros.
okay,
Regulations
great,
are forward.
Thank you for your response, Randy.
Okay.
great responses, everyone. But now we do have to move on since we're running short on time.
Okay, so since we're going to be cutting it a little bit close on time, I'm kind of going to try and condense this. So a lot of the things that we just talked about have solutions, but most of them are political, as we've talked about. So one of the most important things you can do to help solve or help this problem is to vote or to support your local politicians that support climate activism. So to support them is to volunteer for their campaign, like text banking, phone banking, canvassing, and so on and so forth. Promoting and supporting politicians who support climate activism is key to making change because you can really talk to them and get them to speak for you as a citizen. 2 is to pressure politicians that don't support climate activism into passing things like the Green New Deal, the Paris Agreement, etc. What you can do is sign petitions, protest at walks, and write letters /call/email to the elected officials. Most of this information is publicly available. Okay, I'm gonna pass it over to Eliza, okay?
Okay, so additionally, you can also, just join youth activist groups. A bunch of them are on the screen right now, and then you can attend climate activism events, and just really in any way you can support groups that are for passing climate change legislation and climate activism. And then just in general, our last point is that just on a small scale, you can alter your lifestyle to reduce your impact and reduce your carbon footprint. But this is as related to politics and corporations, but just reduce, reuse, recycle, go low waste, and yeah, just those kinds of things. And always encourage other people to vote, reduce their impact on the environment, etc. And I don't know if we have time, but if if just one person wants, okay, we don't have time. Cool. So right now it's clear that our current policies are weak and not effective enough to battle climate change. And although they're a start to ensure a sustainable future, we need more like them and to understand that the future of the planet is more important than the profit motive. So thank you guys so much for listening, and I think we have enough time to take 1 or 2 questions if you guys have some. Or just comments in general, if anyone wants to say anything.
I just want to say that the presentation was really good and it was very informative and engaging for us, the audience, and yeah, it was really good.
Thank you very much, Randy.
I will say that you guys did promote your point in an articulate way. I will at least say that I did not agree with anything that you said. However, I think you guys explained yourself well, so I can at least give you guys that.
Thank you very much. We encourage opposing viewpoints.
Eliza, you're muted. Hold on.
Oh shoot. Okay. I was just saying, thank you guys so much for your feedback and comments, and even if you don't agree with us, it's fine. We're a democracy, so opposing viewpoints are always great. And I think we filled out the feedback forms now.
Yeah, thank you very much for listening. The feedback form is in the chat. Fill it out, please. Thank you very much. Thank you, Vincent.
Again, thank you guys all so much. We'll give you 5 minutes to fill out the form, and then we'll come back together and we'll talk about any glows and grows for the presentation and our team.
We should have link because it's criminal justice, not climate justice. And I'm taken for the sheet.
I don't even know who's speaking, but whoever is, I think, is just breaking up a lot. So they might need some support from the rest.
Yeah, oh. Sorry, you can go ahead.
Oh, okay. I think Pragam was just saying that we should post the link in the chat again. Like that's what I
Yeah.
made out of it.
And to make sure that we're all filling out the same form, and that's the
Yeah,
climate
thank you.
justice workshop on the bottom.
I had the wrong link. Thank you.
And feel free, if you don't have like any more like comments or feedback, to still just like ask any questions you have about the presentation in general. Okay, I have a question. Nobody suggested the music in the chat like Steven has, but that's fine. We don't have to listen to music. We can talk. So we have immigration justice here with us. So I'm just curious on how do you guys see our issue intersect with your issue, if you saw it at all?
I don't think there's any intersection, at least from my view. Maybe there might be some kind of weird looking ideological intersection on that other side of it. I don't know, but yeah.
I would politely disagree and say that most or a lot of immigrants live in low income neighborhoods, and like climate change deeply impacts low income and like low socioeconomic backgrounded neighborhoods. So I would disagree and say there's a lot of intersection.
I want to add on to Marcella because I also agree. I think that there are a lot of refugees and also immigrants that are coming to the US because of their homes that have probably been affected by climate change. So I think that there is a lot of relation in both, but yeah.
I also agree there's a relation when it comes to immigration and climate change. Like for example, with climate change and rising sea levels and everything, like this is a future, for example, sort of connection. But in the future, expected that many people will have to leave their homes and well, their countries and everything, just so they can live in different places that are not affected by the rising sea levels and etc. So like in that sense, immigration is already tied to climate change in many ways, and also like climate change leads to famine, and also it leads to illness, and also it impacts the economical climate. So with that being said, countries are affected by it, and if countries are affected by it, then the people are affected by it. So people tend to go to countries that can offer them a better quality of life and more opportunities. And so the poorer countries are the ones that are going to be most affected by climate change. And so they're going to have an incentive to get out of those countries and come to more developed countries. So it is closely related in many ways.
Thank you guys, all for those opinions on the issues of climate change and immigration. Right now, we're just going to move into any glows and grows before we go back into the main room. So are there any glows and grows about the presentation that you guys can reflect on?
Oh, I can share. I think like a glow is the amount of like information that was in the presentation. Like I think that was like really good, and y'all touched on a lot of aspects of climate change that especially like intersected with what like people normally come into contact with, plus the ways they can help. And also, I think like a couple of grows would be like one, like somebody like checking or like having just somebody watch like the raising hand, because that was kind of confusing to like see that like nobody was on that. So I was just like confused about that. And I think another thing would be like not just like budgeting time, but like about like the call to action section. I think like y'all should have like at least like spent enough time, or at least like had some sort of plan that like if y'all realize y'all are going over, y'all would cut something out in order to share that. Because I think when it comes to like presentations, especially about climate change, that's like the most important part, like what the person who's there can possibly do. Because like research is stuff that like has to be built upon like by yourself, and you have to check those sources. But like having like the call to action and like leaving that seed there is an important thing. That's it.
Thank you, Kelly. That was great advice. We will definitely take that into consideration. Does anybody else? Oh, Marcella.
Thank you, Stephen, for telling me how to raise my hand, because I had no clue how to do that. But Glow, you guys did great. It was an amazing presentation. And the only like row I have is like me being very, very nitpicky. But like maybe like when you're talking about the EU, use a different country than Switzerland, just because like they opted out of the EU. And there's a lot of countries that like don't fit the requirements, and that's the reason why they're not in it. So I just think like, I don't know, add another country to like the example list. But other than that, it was really great.
Yeah, basically, the EU is, if I can just say so, it's almost all of Europe, but Switzerland tries to stay neutral, and they don't really join organizations. So they were even reluctant to join the UN. They joined after North Korea, so they don't really join many organizations. But there's Germany, France, most of the countries are in the EU, and Britain recently left. Brexit, that was the deal. But yeah, the EU is huge, and it's almost all of Europe.
Does anybody else have any feedback?
I just wanted to say that I really liked the discussion questions, and I think that the Kahoot also was like really informative, because like for some of them, like I might not have known the answer, but like once I found out like the answer, like I was like really surprised, even shocked by some of the facts that I found out. So yeah.
Thank you guys so much for the feedback. I think we're going to be heading back into the main room soon. Great job to Immigration Justice. Great job, everybody.
Thank you all so much. Hi everyone, sorry. So if you all wanted to, we can all head out to the main room too. And again, thank you all so much.
You're muted.
Muted. Thank you, Jacob. Welcome back. I think we're just waiting for another group to join us. But how does that feel? Just quick reactions in your visuals, in your videos, in the chat, emoji reactions. It was really great. I didn't even notice how quickly time went by this time, which speaks to how engaged and involved I was in your workshop. So really great job. All right. So I see Zen. So I'm going to pass it over to Zen, who's going to lead us through a debrief of the entire workshop experience.
So that concludes our facilitation workshops tonight, and hope you all learned a lot. And so now, just reflecting off like the entire night, there are several debrief questions that we want you to reflect upon. And starting off, what was it like to develop and facilitate your own issue-focused workshop? And I'll paste the questions into the chat, and you guys can feel free to just share out or just throw in the chat as well. So any volunteers? Madeline?
I thought it was like really fun and just really great and refreshing to be able to produce something that you really care about and to share that with another group of people that you think will also care about that, and then self-reflect afterwards. It was just like a refreshing, like just stance being on the other side of workshop giving.
Yeah, thank you for sharing. I definitely agree. Like, it's a great way to carry out a passion to as well educate others with our passion and literally basically to deliver out the message to carry out forward. Emma?
Yeah, it was actually an amazing experience because I got a better insight into my topic just by researching and working with other people. But it was a little bit nerve-wracking in the beginning because I was having a lot of like technical issues with my computer. So I was really nervous about how that would play out while I was presenting, but everything worked out at the end, and I'm really happy with our audience and how many people shared out and the answers that we got.
Yeah. So we'll move on to the second questions. So what challenges did your team overcome throughout the experience?
We did the presentation. I think that's about it.
Yeah. So go ahead, Liana. Am I pronouncing it right? Liana?
It's Liana.
Oh, Liana, sorry.
Like, I don't know if you mean like experience, like challenges, like throughout creating it, or like challenges in the presentation.
Creating and presenting like the presentation at the same time. How it works.
I feel like we probably weren't the only ones who had like technical difficulties while we were presenting, but I was saying like throughout the process, I think it's just like sort of getting everyone like on the same page, because I feel like a lot of times we didn't have a lot of communication or like miscommunication, so I feel like that's something that we had challenging.
Yeah, I definitely agree as well. Like getting the audience engaged in holding certain conversations. Like some conversation may feel like too personal to some to share out. So yeah, that can also be a challenge. And also Daniel said in the chat, we were able to overcome the discussion issue or like the fear we may not get enough discussion with the participants. Yeah, that ties into the factor again of sharing out a person's thoughts, because some conversations might, as said before, might be too personal to be shared out. And our next question is, what are skills you have had to build to be successful both individually and as a team? And also feel free to just share out or just type in the chat. So McKelly said patience. Communication, public speaking, and organization. Time management, that's all great skills. And Georgia?
I'm just going to speak on behalf of my entire group, but they organized not one, but two extra meetings to get this presentation together. So I think they just really did a great job of organizing and all working together to get this done. I'm really proud of everyone.
Yes, time management. So adding on to public speaking, I feel like public speaking is definitely very important. One of the skills that you have to build in order to basically present. Like I'm facilitating right now, and yeah, I'm like nerve-wracking as well. So definitely stepping out of comfort zone, breaking out of your shell, and yeah, coming out of your shell. So yeah, public speaking, commitment, yeah, holding ourselves accountable for our work that we're doing. Definitely agreed. Organization skills, responsibility, yeah, all great skills. So moving on to our next questions. The fourth question is, what are some key lessons you're walking away from completing this team project? So any new ideas that you have learned, or facts? Any volunteers? So I guess I can share mine. So my key lessons is it's okay to re-educate yourselves and to unlearn just a certain idea that you have been taught in school in the process. It's always remember to re-educate and unlearn certain ideas that you have been taught. So yeah. Madeline?
I think for me, something I learned is just like, I don't know, I feel like I've been like avoiding trying to facilitate things, like events or conversations, even though like I know that I will be fine. And I think that this experience just, I feel like just gave me the opportunity to say like, hey, it's not so bad. And if you actually care about the topic, then it's worth being a little nervous for. And I think that I wouldn't have necessarily had that push to go and do that if not for this opportunity.
Yeah, thank you for sharing. Leanna?
I was just gonna say that like in like presenting, like it's actually if you're prepared, like if you yourself are prepared, like it's gonna go better than you expect it to be. But also like I was going to say that something I realized was that we all have different political opinions, similar to what Randy said in the comments. And I feel like for me, it really helped me to like build a stronger opinion and perspective on like what I believe and what I think is right. So I think that really helped me a lot.
Yeah, definitely agree. And for the sake of time, we're just going to move on to the next question. So our next question is, what work still needs to be done to be ready to facilitate these workshops for schools and community-based organizations this fall? What groups should we be targeting for this workshop? Any volunteers?
No, wait, repeat that real quick. I think it like.
So the question is also in the chat. So what do you want to take this next? What work still needs to be done to be ready to facilitate these workshops with schools and community-based organizations this fall? What groups should we be targeting for these workshops? So basically, who should be our audience, and how should we? What still needs to be done in order to reach out to these groups of people?
I mean, I would say kids, definitely our age, and social media. I think would be the best outreach in a sense if that's what you're asking.
Yes, definitely agree. Like to the general public as a whole, like everyone should be. It doesn't hurt to to educate yourselves on these topics, maybe. So yeah. So our next discussion question is, what insights do you have for your own personal growth as a leader? Elisa, I don't know if I pronounced that right.
It's okay. It's Alyssa.
Alyssa.
I'd say probably just like you know, like somebody said before, I don't remember who said it, but once you prepare everything, you're just so much more confident in yourself, and it flows very smoothly. And insight for personal growth as a leader. Listen to other people's opinions and share yours. Don't be afraid to say how you feel, but also to listen to what others are saying and really take it in and come to something that benefits the whole group.
Yeah, definitely agree. Marcella?
I think that for the insights for your own personal growth, I think a big thing for me is kind of being okay with out of like YVote meetings. I think like a big thing was like I didn't want to like force my group to like meet with us like outside. So I was like trying to make sure we get it all done, and we still ended up having like 3 meetings like this weekend, like to make sure that we like got everything done. And so like learning that like it doesn't have to be perfect and that's okay to go outside of the meeting is like a big part of my own growth.
Yes, definitely agree. And we'll move on to our last and final debrief questions. How does the work you have done towards this project fit into the bigger picture of creating change?
I mean, the entire idea of organization was, I think, is built into this project, and I think that is something that we could bring to make whatever political change we wanted to make.
Yeah, I agree with what Jacob said, and just to add on to him, I feel like this process is an important step of like educating others to carry on that message, because change starts with educating ourselves and then the public. So I think this is like a stepping stone towards educating others for certain issues that we're discussing. Any volunteers? Anyone else who would like to share?
Yeah, pretty much with what you and Jake said. When it comes to organizing and also being able to change, instill change into society, we have to change ourselves and also be able to learn and then teach other people and include them when it comes to the changes and everything we're trying to achieve. So it does, for example, we were able to work as a team. We're able to learn individually and also teach one another, and we're able to teach other people through our work and through our research. So pretty much it translates to the whole thing of organizing, being able to teach other people about, I don't know, maybe our goals or, well, the thing that we're trying to accomplish, and pretty much all of that. So yeah.
Yeah, thanks for sharing, Randy. So for the sake of time, if you haven't like had a chance to share it out, please type your answer in the chat, and I'll pass it on to Mello or Sanda for our next activity.
Yes. All right. So
a
I'm
little bit.
just gonna
Wait,
do.
Mello, just I messed up a little bit. I forgot that we needed to move back the room, so I'm gonna need another minute or two if you
Yeah.
can.
All right, got it. Definitely.
Or something.
No worries. I got you. So thank you so much, number one, to Zen leading us through that debrief. Clap it up for him. You did a wonderful job. And I just want to affirm all of you who felt super nervous coming into this experience, not just in YVote, but facilitating your workshops. Y'all all did really amazing things and really shifted in your own development. So I hope you recognize that and honor that that is something that matters. As far as this experience, it was only an hour, but getting through that 45 minutes of facilitating something, even if your bit was like 5 minutes, that's substantial push for you as in public speaking and engaging with the group. There's so many different things that are going through a facilitator's mind. So I hope that one of the connections that y'all are making also is that facilitating workshops demand two things from you. It demands you as a facilitator to be mindful of those emotions that come up before you're facilitating. So all of those feelings are valid. It demands you to acknowledge how comfortable you are in facilitating, especially on issues around social justice, because You know that there are people with opposing opinions. You know that there are people with real life experiences that may be coming to your workshop to voice all of those different opinions and backgrounds and trying to do due diligence by them. So that's number one, like recognizing that uncomfortableness is a huge part of facilitation. And I'm losing my train of thought. I think I wanted to say one more thing, but facilitation really allows you to put a mirror in front of yourself and allow yourself to name the things that you need to know more about before you actually lead a workshop on it. So the workshop wasn't just about educating peers, it's about educating yourself. So let's, remind ourselves that that was also part of a goal of this experience. You are all creating workshops and issues that some of you might know a lot around, but a lot of us still have so much to learn. Even those who are experts in the field have a lot to learn from the people who are most impacted by them. So I just want to acknowledge that y'all did some really great work for the last time. Maybe I'm going to say it a million more times in closing, but really, really congratulate you and your peers on coming together and being able to facilitate such amazing work.
Almost there.
Almost there, got it. And so Sandra's getting ready to break us out into groups. So I hope that all of you have your group attire, which is the color that your team decided on. You're gonna go into your breakout room. So everybody, in order to participate in this, please turn on your cameras, because it's not gonna be super engaging and sexy if half of your group is off camera. But we'll push through anyway. But I really want to do a last push to please turn your cameras on for at least this piece, so that way we can capture the full group.
We're going to open up the rooms. If you got something aside, and thank you to our guests who are now leaving. So special.
Yes,
to have
thank you
here.
so much.
If you have a wrong group assignment, because we were doing this super swiftly, stay and we'll make sure to transfer you over. So breakout rooms are open.
Hello.
Welcome back, everyone.
Oh, flashing.
We had a color.
I'm on the Manhattan Bridge. So this is gonna make taking a picture pretty hard. Check out my awesome blue shirt. But on a serious note, you guys all did such a great job facilitating, and I really cannot understate this, because it went so smoothly, so much better than I could have possibly imagined. And I don't know what you guys accomplished in the meeting today when we were not there, but I imagine you guys improved leaps and bounds. So just want to first off say how proud I am of all of you. And for number one, Randy says we got the highest. Yeah, there we go. Also very proud of you guys for being very engaged in the other group's presentation as well. I didn't have any time to tell you guys that before they presented. I wanted to be hey, you guys, make sure we're engaged as well in their presentation. But you guys fully stepped up to the task. In fact, I would say that we were more engaged in their presentation. They were engaged in our presentation. But that is personal opinion. Again, very proud of all of you. You can't see my thumbs up right. There you go. There's the red light. Where is it?
Yeah, I definitely agree. You guys did amazing, and I'm really proud of you all. We went on Friday with or last Tuesday with not that much, and we finished our presentation and had enough that we went over. And had I not been kicked out of the presentation 8 times, we might have been just on time. But thanks for dealing with all of the tech issues that occurred.
Also cannot stress enough how some of you are so naturally good at facilitation, being very, very comfortable with bouncing off of responses from the group and then transitioning between slides. You hear the subway, by the way? Anyway, you guys are all just, I can honestly see some of you as facilitators for YVote itself next year. Okay, Santa says we have 3 minutes, so we need to take some goofy picture as a group. But obviously the blue does not show. So we're gonna have to figure something out.
And I'm in red. That's
Jacob
not
is in
gonna
red. So let's see.
I could complete the look. Maybe.
So you can compliment me, Jacob. But Marcel, first, do you want to take a group picture, just like normal, and then we'll figure out.
Sure. Teresa and Namra, are you guys able to open your camera for like a minute so that we can take this picture?
This is terrifying. Like I look so scared.
Just turn the brightness up.
Like you're arrested. You're getting arrested.
Yeah, like there's police lights behind me. At least you can say I was at a historic moment, at a historic spot. You know,
You might be getting pulled over.
that's the impression.
All right, guys, smile. All right.
You know what we could do is everyone else turns off their lights, and then we all have this like creepy, like.
Oh my God, I can do that. Wait, I have so many lights. I mean,
Okay.
Frank knows that because I was showing it to him.
Yeah.
I don't know if you'd be able to see me. I'd be
Did I do only
black.
light and then you're red and
Literally.
I'm
And then we all get like really close to the. Oh my God. Sorry, everyone turn off. Everyone turn off the lights in your room, and then we.
It's not gonna work.
I'm just gonna be blue. I'm gonna
I'm gonna
like.
like get the light on the hallway over here. There we go. That would work. And then put the doing it.
See, this is super scary. See, and if we all get really
Wait,
close
I
to the
can't
camera.
focus it though.
Like that. There you go.
Here, this is our if immigration justice had a horror movie poster. Marcel, you ready for the picture?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
All right.
Cool lights.
Again, really proud of all of you. I don't know how much time we have left, but does anyone else have anything to say before we all like break up?
I just don't even a minute.
Last 30 seconds.
It was super fun working with all of you. Just wanted to say that. I had the time of my life.
Check.
Thank you.
Yeah, I learned a lot, and I want to thank you, Frank and Marcella, again for everything. It's really fun. You guys made it fun and interesting, so thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Yeah, y'all were cool.
Thank
But
you.
cut the check though.
Oh my God. Right, straight to the point, Jacob. Jesus. Just remember, you guys, you have our contact information. Please feel free to reach out to us whenever you want. I think some of us in office hours to discuss, like, you know, you guys sending us further essays or whatever for us to look over, or if you ever need our help, always feel free to let us know.